Making sure we're recording. Awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is Sam. Thank you for joining us today on our painting adventure. We're going to be taking you into the woods and we're going to be painting today. So I hope you guys enjoy our video tutorial. I really enjoy hiking. It's one of my favorite things to do. So I'm really excited to teach this painting today. We painted this in mind that it could be really anywhere that you'd like. The White Mountains, the Adirondack Mountains in Vermont, maybe somewhere up in Alaska. It's really up to where your imagination takes you today. So what we want to begin with today is making sure we have all of our items that we'll be using to make this painting. So I'm going to just go through all of our supplies and then we'll jump right into our painting here. So I've got a plate, half a paper plate with my two paints on it. I'll get to that in a second, but we'll need some sort of palette to put our paints on so they don't go all over the place. We'll need a cup of water. I've just got an old plastic cup here, and it's only filled about this way, this much. I've got a couple of different kinds of brushes we'll be using today. I've got a big flat background brush. I have a medium-sized round brush. I have a little bitty detail brush. And we might end up using this angle brush here. The other things we'll need are a pencil or two, some kind of straight edge device. I've got a T-square here and a nice long yardstick. That'll be helpful for getting in our horizon line in a couple of minutes. And you'll want to take out our little tracing paper with our characters on it. We're going to probably want to unroll that from the elastic band and set it to the side to let it flatten out so that it makes it easier on us and it doesn't curl up when we start to paint. So my first step is going to be measuring a horizon line across our painting. Now, if you can see in our example behind us, and if you weren't sure beforehand, this is what we'll be painting today. We're going to put in a line right through, basically right across the middle of our painting so that we are able to stay, keep our blue up here and our mountains and our scenery more in the front. It's just a little guideline. So we don't want to put too heavy of a pencil line, just a nice little sketch right across the middle of our canvas. So I'm going to make mine right about halfway. If you really want to measure these out, it's 16 inches across and 20 inches tall, so it would be about 10 inches down and right across the middle of our page. But I'm just going to eyeball it. I think right about here looks good to me. I'm going to take my pencil and just very carefully. Doesn't need to be very heavy. You probably can't see it very well on your computer or your phone screen. But just for yourself, it'll be easier to stay in those lines. So the first two colors, I kind of gave you a sneak peek before when I showed you my paper plate. We're going to be using white and our light blue. You'll have two different colors of blue in your painting kit. We're going to be using the light sky blue first. So what we want to do to begin with, we'll take our big background brush. Since we're doing the background first, we're going to take some blue to begin with on our brush. I'm going to start right up in the top left and start working my way down. We're going to keep this nice and loose, nice and quick, so our backgrounds can dry quickly, so we don't have to worry about any of the blue leaking in to our mountains behind us. So I'm going to start right at the top, back and forth. We're going to use our brush like a fishtail today, not like a dolphin, so that our brush strokes stay nice and horizontal rather than vertical. And we're going to start, once you've got a nice layer of blue right on top, we're going to take some of our white and we're going to start streaking it in just a little bit. You'll notice we've got our sun, or maybe it's a moon, whatever you guys want to think about. The moon where the sun is right on the horizon. So that means it's going to be lighter as we get down lower and a little bit darker up in the top of the sky. So I've got a little bit of white on my brush and I'm just going to very carefully start to blend that in. And this will also look like some wispier, farther away clouds. We are going to be adding in some fluffier ones a little bit later on, but for right now, we're just gonna streak in a little bit of that. We're gonna make a lighter blue than the light blue we're making. So I'm taking a little bit more of my darker sky blue, blending some white in. Now we've got some really big, nice studio lights, some filming lights in here. So I'm already noticing that my background is drying pretty quickly. So I'm going to try to work a little bit faster so I don't run into any issues. What can happen when you're painting and your canvas, your paint starts to dry before you're finished with your background, what can happen is the wetness from the paint on your brush can actually start to pull on the drying paint on your canvas, and you'll wind up with some white streaks like I've got right here, but they're not going to look like what we want them to. It's going to be kind of these little spots of paint where you can see some of the canvas through it and some of the blue on top. We want to try to cover all those little gaps in our canvas so that there's no little white holes. The only white we want on our canvas is our paint. So I'm very carefully coming right down to my horizon line. Right along the edge there, I might add just a little bit more white right in the middle here. So we don't need to do quite so many layers on our sun. Just like that. Excellent. So I've taken my brush now that I'm finished with our sky, and we're going to just let that sit in our water for a while. We might end up using it in the mountains later, but I don't think so. So I'm going to see how long this takes to dry, and while we're waiting for that, I'm going to start pulling out some of my other colors. We're going to use some of our gray, which is a nice light gray color, and some of our dark green. So I'm going to begin coming down from our right side and pulling my green in below our line. This is going to be for our mountain, right here, this closest one to where our ledges where our friends are sitting. So I'm going to take my round brush now. I'm going to get some green on there and very carefully start shaping that mountain out. So it's going to come down like this. And you can keep it nice and loose. It'll look a little bit more like trees. You can kind of go in along that line just like this. But we want to at least outline first before we start filling in. So about right there. It's up to you if you'd like to come all the way down to the edge here. I'm going to leave that corner. I don't know if you can even see it so well. There we go. I'm going to leave this corner blank. So it's just a little bit easier for us to go in with our gray afterwards. So I've got kind of this nice triangular shape in my canvas. And now I'm going to take my green and just start filling in really nicely. Now you might notice that this is taking a while with our little brush. So as I said, we might end up going back to our larger brush just to add a coat in, and then we'll do our texture with our small brush again. I'm going to take my large brush with my green And just very quickly work in some of this area over here, just so it goes a little bit more quickly for us. Now we don't want to use all our green up in this corner, right? Because we need it for the other mountains on the other side. But luckily those ones will be blending some of our lighter colors into it to make some of the textures that you see in the painting behind me. So I'm just going to very quickly come in, add some nice texture over the lines that we just added in. Just like that. If at all through watching this recording you feel like you're falling behind my painting steps, feel free to go ahead and pause the video and just keep going as you finish up. As I was saying, we've got some really nice big lights and I've got a fan on in the corner, so my painting is drying up really quickly. But maybe those of you at home who don't have big, huge lights and the heat cranked all the way up might be taking a little bit longer to dry, so don't get frustrated. Awesome. So I'm gonna check out and see how my sky is drying up, and it's almost there. I'm gonna let this corner dry out now, and we're going to move in to using some of our gray alongside our green to do our big mountain on this side. We'll come back in a little bit later and add some white on top, so it kind of looks a little bit like a snowy peak. So I'm gonna take a little bit more green onto my palette. And let's see, I'm gonna take just a little bit this time, and I'm gonna take some gray. I'm going to mix those together, but not perfectly blended. You can kind of see I'm leaving some green streaks in there, some gray streaks. This will help it look a little bit more natural when we go to put it in. So I'm actually gonna take a little bit more gray than I had in there originally. We can always add a little bit more green. And this will be to start off the peak of our mountain. So I'm gonna come from the edge, come up just a teeny little bit, make our peak, and then I'm gonna start coming down just like this, and you can add some ridges in. And as we get farther down, I'm gonna very carefully start adding just a little bit more green. Now we don't want to come all the way to our edge here because you see we've got this nice river right in the middle here. So I'm going to pick a spot probably right around there to finish coming any further right on my canvas. I'm going to do the same kind of idea and pull this right down to about here. We're gonna block in our last peak on this side using the same color we're using right now. And then we'll just go back over it with our dark green again. We kind of got a little mountain block right there. So now I'm gonna go in with my gray and my green again. This one's a little bit smaller, so I'm gonna stick with my medium-sized round brush, and I'm just going to start adding the same kind of technique in that we did for this mountain over here. Taking a little extra gray. Now I'm just pulling straight from the color I'm using. You'll see that my gray is starting to turn a little bit green, but that's okay. Making sure it stays lighter, more gray as we go towards the summit. We'll add a little bit more green in as we go back down towards where our river is going to go. Just like this. There won't be quite as much texture in this, you'll notice, because the gray is kind of muting the green a little bit. It's making it a little bit lighter instead of darker like this, where we're getting some of the highlights from the canvas underneath. Those are sort of fading away, but that's okay, because in real life, in nature, the farther away something is, the lighter it looks to our eye. And that's called atmospheric perspective. It's this whole science thing I don't really want to get into too much, but it's kind of neat. The next time that you go for a drive around the mountains or for a hike, take a look out over the view and you'll notice that the trees and the mountains that are closer to you seem a lot more vivid, a lot darker and brighter colors, if that makes sense. And the ones farther away kind of look hazy, kind of look like there's mist in front of them. And that's actually the atmosphere. You know, we can't really see oxygen and all those things, but when the sun reflects off of it in the right way and over a really great distance, you can actually see our atmosphere, which is kind of neat. All the little particles. I'm adding a little bit more gray up here. The reason I'm not adding my white in is because I just don't want it to mix too much with the green. We want some of that white to sit a little heavier on top, because generally when it snows, the snow doesn't turn green or the color that it's sitting on, right? It usually stays pretty white. Just working in all these little colors, or two colors rather. Just like this. We want to make sure we're coming right to the edge of the canvas so we don't end up with a white line going down. That was a little easier with our big background brush. But this one you kind of have to go right. See, I'm painting right along the edge. Now we don't usually paint the very edge of our painting here. As you can see in the painting behind me, we like to frame all of our paintings. It helps to conserve them, it helps them from stretching or warping, and it also just looks a little bit nicer to display them. All right, this is looking pretty good. Now, before I get into our river and our mountain that's going to go back here, I do want to work in our last peak right off to the left here. So I'm gonna just wash that extra gray off my brush. I'm going to take the tiniest little bit of black out of my bottle here. If you guys are using at home, if you're using our bags that we prepared for you, you might want to grab either a separate plate or just put the black somewhere off to the side so it doesn't get mixed in, because we're going to need that for our trees here and our little friends here in the corner. So just a little teeny bit. And I'm gonna do the same thing I did when I made our light gray before, grayish green. I'm gonna take some green and just a little teeny bit of black and mix that in to make a slightly darker green. Since this one is pretty close to them and it's more in the corner, we don't wanna make it too dark so that it's hard to see his head here in the tracer. So I'm gonna add just a little bit of our gray in there. It'll make it kind of this interesting darkish grayish green. just as long as it's a different color than this and this. And I'm just coming right back along that edge. If some of our grays and greens mix a little bit, that's okay, because it's the same color. Now this one's really, really small. It doesn't even come all the way to the bottom of the canvas. I know it's a little tricky to see. Let me pull this back a little bit. There we go, awesome. I'm gonna make it really nice and small, just like that. So we've got plenty of room for our rock and for our river. And just fill that in. Maybe take a little extra bright green. Make it look a little bit more interesting. There we go. Awesome. So I'm gonna wash that extra black. I just added in off my brush. We're going to start using a little bit of white in with, maybe if you have enough of our greenish gray that we mixed up here. If not, mix up just a little bit more. And then we can add in that last mountain range that goes back down the river. Now this one's going to be the lightest one that we use. Now for this one, we want to start right along the edge of our sky, and we're just going to come up a little bit into above our hill here. So the first thing I want to do is outline this line right here very, very carefully. If we need to, we can go back in with a little bit of our dark green again to put over any lines you might cross over. Right up to the top here like that. And I'm gonna come up maybe to about here. And I'm gonna pull that. We're gonna just leave that little tick in the corner. And I'm gonna come over to this side, maybe take a little bit of extra white on my brush so that it doesn't blend into this at all, and very carefully come right along our horizon line here. You can make maybe some little trees on top. And very carefully and slowly start pulling down from this side and pulling up from this side. I need a little bit more white. So that they meet right there. And we want to come down on our left side just a little bit, and same kind of idea, but just going down this way, and this will shape our river. Just like that. And then same idea as before, we're gonna take our nice light green and start working in our texture again. Take a little bit of white maybe. And come right up on the top to make our little trees. You can probably kind of see I've got a little bit of extra dark green on the back of my brush that's kind of adding itself in there, which is okay. It'll make it a little bit more realistic, right? Mountains aren't usually all one solid color. You usually have all kinds of different colors and patterns and different kinds of trees. Just like this. And hopefully while we're working on this, our other areas are drying nicely so that we can start on our ledge here in our river. You'll notice I'm kind of flipping my brush around, making my brush strokes go down and then kind of pulling them back up. That just helps to kind of blend things together without over blending too much. Just like that. Almost done. Filling in. Maybe a little bit more green right here in the middle. And there we go. Awesome. Just like that. And you can kind of see everything's starting to come together now, right? It's not just triangles and green on our canvas anymore. We've got some mountains. So our next step before we put our tracers in, we need to do our river and our gray and then let that dry. But luckily we have some time to let that dry while we work on our tracers. So what we want to do, and I think I'm going to very quickly go grab, actually, you know what? I think I can make my dark blue fit right there. So no worries. I'm going to take my dark blue. I'm going to get my round brush nice and clean. I don't want all that gray and white and green on there. Now we should still have a little bit of extra sky color, or light blue. So what I'm going to do is take just a little bit of that to begin with. And same idea as with our sky, with our mountains, the farther away it is, the lighter it's going to be. But because it's water, we don't really want to make it look exactly like the sky. So we're going to just put just a little bit of light blue right in this corner here. And then we'll blend our dark blue into it. So I'm going to just wipe my brush off on my rag. Oops, that's white, wrong color. Our dark blue. And very carefully blend right up like this. And that'll just give it some highlights, and hopefully some of that light blue will pull through on our brush. So I'm going to turn this just a little bit closer to me. I'll turn it back so you guys can see in just a second. I'll just make it a little easier. But we're going to just very carefully, first of all, outline and then fill in. Now down here, I'm going to do this part first while it's still facing you guys. We want to go very carefully make this little mound here with our blue color. That's where our little cliff is going to go, where our friends are. So I want to very carefully come up like this. And it's just going to touch right on the edge of that green there, and our gray is going to go in this little white bubble down here. So now I can start pulling my river color right along the edge. You go into your mountain a little bit. It's not the biggest, not the end of the world, because it'll help make the riverbank look a little bit darker. Follow right along the edge. If you feel like this brush is getting too big and you don't have enough space in here, downsize to your little mini detail brush. I'm going to turn this so I don't end up with my hand right on my canvas. I think most of the paint down there is drying up really nicely, but I don't want to end up smearing any paint along. All right, there we go. Got my outline done, and now we're keeping our brush strokes to follow the curves of the river. Water all flows in one direction. So we want to make our brush strokes all flow in one direction. It might end up a little bit lighter in the middle. You might want to make it a little bit lighter in the middle because that's the widest part of our river here, so it's getting a little bit more sunlight. Just like that. Excellent. Now it's up to you afterwards. If you want to take a little bit of your white or maybe a little gray in your little detail brush and add some streaks in there to make it look a little bit maybe more like white water. This is a nice lazy river, but if you want it to look a little bit more rapid, you could take some white or gray and streak that in very carefully. So I'm going to wash my brush off really, really well this time. Now, hopefully our gray didn't end up getting too mixed in with our green. If it did, there's a really good solution. You can take some of your white and a little bit of black, just a little bit of black. We don't want it too dark. We want to be able to still see our friends down here. And you can mix up a little bit of gray. That's a good option too. So we are going to take some gray and add this in, and then we'll take a little bit of break from painting to work on our tracer. So we'll take our gray, same kind of idea. We're going to very carefully come right along this line. And when we go in with the black, we can add the edge of the cliff a little bit more. Right along the edge of our mountain here to the right rather. And just fill it in all the way to the bottom of your canvas. Just that little corner. Guess you guys can't see that, so let me turn that. There we go. Awesome. And I'm just filling that in. Excellent. So when that's all filled in, you can go ahead and set your brushes to the side, probably in your cup of water so they don't dry out. I am going to take my canvas and face it. Oh no, that's a different angle that you can see. I'm gonna take it and face it towards my fan in that corner over there. And you guys might wanna do the same next to a fan or a sunny window, a heater, a vent, something in your house that's going to help to dry up your paint a little bit more quickly so that we can work on our tracer. But luckily, we do still have to put the outline on our tracer. So we're going to, I'm gonna move my camera down just a little bit so you can see the edge of the table. You'll notice that our tracer has Sharpie on one side, a nice outline, and then on the back it's blank. So what we wanna do is take the side with the Sharpie, we're gonna lay it flat on a clean surface. And we wanna take our pencil and we wanna very carefully go ahead and shade right along the edges of all those lines with the side of the pencil, we don't want to push straight down because you could end up ripping a hole right through your tracer. So I'll show you how to do it on here, and then we're going to set that to the side and do our clouds afterwards and let the rest of our painting dry up a little bit. So you can go ahead, grab your pencil. You might need 2 or a sharpener, because sometimes this process wears down on softer pencil lead. It shouldn't take too long. It's a nice, easy outline, just like I'm doing. When you're finished tracing, you might want to either wash your hands or at least wipe off the side of your wrist with something, because graphite, even when you're just writing, you kind of know, and I already have some on the side of my hand, it transfers really easily onto your skin, and then that can transfer, as you'll see later, the graphite can transfer really easily onto our canvas, and we don't accidentally want to end up with a handprint in pencil on the side of our painting. So we just want to make sure our hands are a little bit clean when we're finished with this. When you're done, you'll notice you can still see the Sharpie on one side, and on the other, you've got this nice shiny layer of pencil. So we're gonna set that to the side when you're all set and ready. And I don't think my painting is quite dry enough to do our tracers yet, but that's okay. We've got 2 more steps that we can do while we're waiting. So the first one, place this back the right way. The first one is going to be our little clouds up in the sky. I really like my little round brush, so I'm going to use that. You can use your little teeny detail brush if you want some smaller clouds, but if you are using this one, since we used it so much already today, get it really nice and clean. I'm going to wash it twice and get it in on my rag. So I'm going to lift this back up so you can see a little easier. And I want to make sure I take some white that doesn't have any green in it so we don't wind up with any green clouds, right? And you can pick wherever you'd like. I'm going to try to follow right along with our sample, but we want to start small and work our way larger. That way our clouds don't end up being really, really large. It's easier to make things bigger when you're painting. It's not so easy to make things smaller. So what I'm going to do is just a little bit of paint on my brush. I really don't have all that much white because these are really nice, light, fluffy clouds. So just take our brush and make the little top of the cloud, and then very carefully go back and forth. And we start, my easel sliding on me. There we go. Very carefully start going back and forth, working in the shape. Now, clouds generally have one side is a little bit larger and the other side kind of trails off, and that's because the wind's blowing it. The side that the wind is pushing on is usually a little bigger because they all build, and then it gets trailed off as they go. So it's up to you. I'm going to make this one up here. Notice how I'm keeping this side a little bit smaller, this side a little bit longer. There we go. I'm going to probably do a couple more of these, 3 or 4. The ones that are maybe more on this side of the canvas, you might want to make a little smaller so it looks like they're off in the distance. I'm going to put one right here. Just like that. Maybe a little tiny one right here. And put one right over here so that I'm not got all my clouds all in one line. Make it look a little bit more interesting. And I think I'll put another one kind of coming off. It'll be interesting, really nice if you have one kind of coming off the edge here so it looks like your painting is going off into the distance. It's a whole scene, right? Maybe another little teeny one right here, and another one right near where our sun will go. And while we've got our white, we might as well add our little sun in. Or moon. Or alien planet, I guess. If you are using your imagination that way, that's awesome. So how we're going to do this is we're going to pick a spot right in the corner here where our back mountain and our big mountain come together. We're going to make a very careful half circle, like this. Very carefully outline, and you might want to use your little detail brush for this part. Outline right along the side of the mountain, and then fill it in. If you feel like you can see too much of the sky behind it, when we're finished with our black, you can go back over and do a second coat. Try not to, as I said before with the clouds, in order to not make it a super moon or a really, really big sun, start small so that if you end up making it a little bit bigger, it's not going to look too crazy. So let me double check. I've got to wait maybe 5 more minutes for my gray to dry down here in the bottom, but while we're working on that, we can pull out our black if we haven't already and start working on our trees. So now I am going to downsize to my little detail brush, at least for the time being. And I'm going to take some black. I want to start small, so to do that, I'm going to take the side of my plate and just very carefully roll that brush like this, right along the edge, and that'll help to kind of just twist those bristles together and make it a little bit pointier, a little easier to use. So how I'm going to start is right pretty close to the edge. This tree is going to go off the edge, and we'll probably want to use our round brush we've been using so much today to fill in, but at least to start out, we want to start out nice and skinny and small. So I'm going to come a little bit higher than our green here. I'm going to start right up in the blue, and I'm going to put a little black dot. And very carefully, try to get my easel to stop sliding on me. There we go. Very carefully, we want to start going back and forth, making little tree branches. And as we come down, very gradually, we don't want to do this right away because we'll end up with a pine tree that takes up the entire canvas. We're going to start very carefully making it a little bit wider as we go. Just like this. Starting to make it just a little bit wider. And you might want to take a little bit of a step back if you're really close. Mine's starting to kind of lean up this way. It's starting to curve a little bit towards the edge here. So you just want to kind of look at it maybe from a step or two back and then go back in and fix it however you need. Sometimes when you paint really close, it ends up kind of going along the way that your hand is. Your hand's drawn towards the edge like this as you go down. Unless you want your trees to look like they're leaning. You're kind of hanging off the edge of the cliff. I've seen trees do that before where they found the perfect spot and they're just clinging right onto that cliff, trying to get as much sunlight as they can. And you'll notice as I'm coming down, the size of my branches is starting to get a little bit larger. So in a minute, I think I'm going to upgrade to my round brush we've been using today. So get that nice and clean, get all the gray and the way we just used it for white, right? So we want to get that out. And come in and start doing the same thing. And this will go make the process a little bit more quick. Now, when we get to a little bit further down, I'm going to stop on that tree. It's gonna look maybe like it's hovering. We're gonna do our other tree until they meet up right around here, and we can fill in that corner when we get to that point. But until then, we're gonna just leave it blank so we can get into our next tree. So I would say right about here, I'm gonna finish filling in that side just so that it dries evenly together. Just like that. I'm gonna stop, put my brush away, take my little brush back, and we're gonna make one more tree, quite a bit smaller. I'm gonna start right about here. So we got our little dot. And the reason really that I stopped is so that I can rest my hand right here without worrying about getting it into my black. So very carefully, same idea, we're gonna start, oh, I need to make it a little taller. I went too fat too quick. Very carefully, start pulling our second tree down. Mine are already starting to intersect. That's okay, we've still got plenty of room on the other side before our other branches are going to start interfering with each other. All right, so now we've met up with our other tree. I'm gonna take our big brush back again. And now what I'm going to do is just work on this side. The other side, we're gonna fill in with all black. So if you wanna follow along, and then I'll show you how to do that. Nice and easy, we'll use our big brush again. And I'm just gonna start swooping down from this side, just like that. Making our branches longer as we go. Awesome, I'd say that's probably about good. Because I don't know if you can see so well over here, but we've got this little ledge that kind of comes up. So we can add that in as well. I'm going to slide my canvas back a little bit. Kind of comes right into our gray, just a teeny little bit. It comes up. You can kind of give it a little bolder there, maybe. Right up into the tree. There we go. Now, the rest of that area, we can take our big brush again, make sure it's nice and clean. I think we used the green on it last time. Nice and dry. And we don't want to use up all of our black for this. Remember, we need to still trace in our little man and our little dog here. But I am going to try to keep my brush strokes here kind of wispy and back and forth like our branches were. There we go, nice. So it's looking like nice. My canvas is nice and dry, and I can go ahead and start tracing. So I'm gonna move everything out of my way. All my paints and brushes and pencils, definitely this. I'm going to take my canvas out of my easel, and you might want to do the same if you're using an easel. If you're using just flat on the table and you've been doing it the whole time, just leave it there. I'm gonna lay it so that this side, well, you can't really see, so I'll have to move my camera again. I'm going to have it so that The side with our mountains are over away from us, and the side with our, I just said mountains, I'm sorry, our trees. Our mountains, our big summit over here is gonna stay facing us so that we don't get into our black again. So I'm going to pick a good spot right kind of in the middle of our hill right here, our little ledge. And very carefully, same idea as when we went and put the graphite on our canvas. We're going to take the edge of our pencil and shade right along all those lines. All right, there we go. I've got them traced in nicely. If it's a little bit tricky to see where they are in the hill over here, you might want to just take your pencil and very carefully go back over it. We don't need them to be perfect. We don't need them to be really, really easy to see, just as long as, just like our horizon line before, excuse me, as long as there is enough of an outline that you'll be able to follow along without going too far out of the lines. This just makes it a little easier than trying to freehand trace it in by just drawing it on our canvas. So I'm going to take the rest of my black, and we're going to use this to do really the last step of our painting. Like I said before, if you want to, you can go in and add a little bit of white up into the top peak of our mountain here to make it look more like snow. If you're feeling like you want it to be more summery, you don't have to do that. So I'm going to take my black, same idea as before, if you want to roll it out so it's nice and skinny. And very carefully, now you might want to leave your canvas flat on the table from when you were tracing it as well, but I'm going to very carefully go in and just outline everything first. His arm here, and then we'll fill it in afterwards. And it's up to you. We added a little walking stick here. We felt like it would be a little silly to add that in on the tracer. It's such a little skinny line, but I'm going to take my little skinny brush and just give them just a little walking stick. Just like that. I guess you can't really see that from here. Here we go. I've got my gentleman traced out. And I'm gonna work on our pup here. Just like this. I'm going to start filling in with my detail brush again. Almost finished. Excellent. Awesome. So mine is all set. I might just demonstrate for you guys how to streak in a little bit of that white on the top of that mountain in case you wanted to do that. So I'll take a little bit of my gray, a little bit of white, and just add some little snow streaks in there, maybe right on the top there, one coming down. Just like that. All right, so our last step is going to be to take either a little detail brush, or if you have a nice long bristle one like this, it's called a script brush or a liner brush. We're gonna take some white, and very, very carefully, we're going to go ahead and add our initials right in the bottom corner, or your last name, or you can leave it blank if you'd like, it's up to you. I'm going to put HAS for Hammar's Art Studio. You could date it too if you'd like. So put HAS 20. And once your initials are on it, we're all finished. All right, so I hope everyone had a wonderful time, a nice relaxing, creative time at home painting with us today. We really enjoy this painting. As I said before, I love being out in nature and hiking, so to be able to do a painting like this is really, really nice. So if you guys enjoyed, we would really love to see your final image, the final picture of your painting, so you can email that to us, and we really like to see everyone's finished work. We've got a whole bunch of other painting classes coming out this week, and we'll be repeating them next week as well. This horse that you see behind us is really fun. There's actually some secret scented paint in that one. So while you're painting, you might smell something sweet while you're going through it, making our horse. The background is really easy and flowing. It's very relaxing. So we'd love to have you join us on that one. We've got Sonic and a couple of other really fun characters like that. So we really hope you enjoyed. I hope this brought your mind off of something that, you know, we're going through a lot of different things that are happening with our lives right now. So hopefully this brought you maybe into nature, made you think about summer and hiking, or being, you know, just out in nature. So I hope everyone enjoyed. We hope to see you back on here really soon, and we'll talk to you again. Have a great rest of your day, morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're watching this, and stay safe, stay well, and keep on painting. Thank you for arting with us today.